Here we go, another episode. Here we are back again. We've been on the road, been out and about a little bit, seeing the country, 12 states in 10 days, our last tour. But we're back, and we're ready to take on some issues that are a little bit different from what we usually talk about when we talk about our three-legged student, the parent, and then the educator. We're gonna go a little bit beyond that today and talk about some things that are pretty much been hitting home with what's going on in our lives right now as a people. And I say as a people, I want to frame that because I think that we need to recognize that we are different and our struggles are not the same. So when we get to this point, we think we can let everybody put us in a pot and all of us struggle to get out that same pot. We should have never been in that pot. We were the only people that came to this country under so many atrocities and lived through it. We stayed here. The only other people that got treated worse than the black man in America was the Native American. He was already here. The one that was already here and the one was brought here against his will. For all that time, we've been dealing with all of these issues. So when we talk about not being the same or the struggle, not that we put down anybody else's struggle, but our struggle is different. Our struggle comes from a place of people don't want to say it. You owe it to us. 300 years worth of free labor added up. I'm not going to say who said that, but back in the Omni, in the 80s, he came here and spoke, and he told the entire country, add it up.
So first of all, it's good to be back. You can see Tony is on the road already, and that is healthy. And I know after being in business with him 20 plus years, I know that's heavy on his heart. So let me just first say, we're back again, as Tony said, Reggie and Tony, better known as Two Men and a Stool. And so I like where you're going, Tony, and that struggle. You're talking about that struggle. And you always said, we got what we had.
We got
what we wanted, but we lost what we had. Go a little bit further, so most folks can understand what you mean. You were making that analogy in some ways, but go a little deeper when you say that. When you say that we got what we wanted, but we lost what we had.
Man, when I think about it, it almost just stifles you to know the type of community we used to have, where we could depend on each other to do this, do that, all the things that we needed in that community. We had all those things, but now we're all standalone citizens. Now we want to be our own person, and we don't want to recognize each other as we pass each other in the streets because we've lost that. We've lost the ability to border. We didn't put a lot of value on money because we knew that everybody in our community could do something different. There was somebody responsible for doing the plumbing. There was somebody responsible for the electrician. Somebody was growing vegetable gardens over here, and we didn't pay with cash because we trusted each other. We had the community that said, if I fix your plumbing, I need those tomatoes. If I come fix your electricity, I need you to come fix my plumbing. If I'm fixing your plumbing and I'm great in school, I'm going to work with your kid with their homework. We bordered and we never talked about money because the value was what? Us.
So you're saying we have somewhat over what period of time? And I'm going to speak from the perspective, we're beneficiaries. You and I are the beneficiaries of the civil rights movement. Would mean that our generation, and granted our kids and grandkids are as well to a degree. What I mean by that, our forefathers, our ancestors, and our parents, they were going through the struggle. They went through the struggle. We were kids. We really didn't understand, but they were protecting us from it. And so when you say that, and you mentioned before, and I want to just put this out there, and that is, I believe wholeheartedly, and this may be a little controversial, Donald Trump is the president of the United States. The legislative body is controlled by the Republican Party. Good or bad, over these next 18 months, we are stuck in a situation that I don't want to sound powerless. And when I hear people talk about it, I still refer back to this whole self-preservation. You talk about what we had, I'm now saying, what are we going to do about it? And you and I on the road when we're driving, and I think our last tour, we spoke in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and we went through 10, 12 states, as you said. We were the keynotes along with Judge Mathis at the Black Boys and Men Symposium with over 600 attendees. And we were the keynotes, and the focus of that was primarily on black boys and men. But I now see a greater perspective, a greater lens, shall I say, that I'm so sick and tired of black on black crime. I don't want to go and point fingers at somebody else anymore around black on black crime. And I'm not talking literally black on black crime. I'm not talking about violence per se, that's an aspect. But when we don't do business with each other, that's black on black crime. Tell me when other communities come to our rescue. They open stores in our communities. They do all these other things, but we do not support each other. And so when I say, and when you say, and I want you to elaborate a little more around that whole talented 10, when we spoke at that conference with 600 attendees, and we went straight at it, and we put people on that roller coaster ride. There were tears, there was joy. But we also said we must look within that talented 10. It's so interesting, and this shows the difference, the disconnect between a younger generation and our generation. I ask so many young people, what is the talented 10? And I have not found 5 young people who knew what I was talking about. So then I realized I might as well be speaking to some Martian up on the moon. So you and I talk about it, but that's not good enough for us to talk about it to ourselves. So Tony, if you would, elaborate a little bit more on that talented 10 as we think about this work, and we think about so many people probably doing it. They may not know they're doing it, or may not know they're part of the talented 10. So if you would, go a little deeper around the talented 10.
Well, back in the day, I won't quote exact dates, but W.E.B. Du Bois had a debate with Booker T. Washington. And the debate centered itself around, Du Bois always thought that there was a talented 10th in our community. And their responsibility was go out, learn, get wealth, get all the things they needed to do to bring back to the community to lift up the other 90%. So the talented 10th, they were given this title. Some of them might not have known they were part of the talented 10th, but there are so many that went off with that task. Booker T. Washington, work your field, work your farm, stay out of trouble, keep your head down, but also keeping in mind he grew up in a different time than W.E.B. So his focus was, hey, stay safe, take care of your family, farm your land, learn a trade, keep your hands clean, keep your head down, and stay away from trouble. W.E.B. said, let's get that talented 10th in college, get them jobs, get them to buy businesses, but also knowing that their responsibility was bring it back home and help your community.
So let's pause there, because I want to go back to that, because I think it's important, because there's a disconnect. If those of us who are baby boomers, or those of us who are born in the 50s and the 60s, have not passed that knowledge down to our younger folks, then how do we expect them to know? In other words, Tony, when you talk about the talented 10, you said community. Our community is still a community. It's just that at that time, we had a physical space, I believe, where we were all in this environment. Well, now we're spread out, but that doesn't mean that we don't have all the ability from social media and et cetera. We still have the ability, capability of being a community. It's just that now we have to be more intentional, more deliberate. And so when you say the talented 10th, I'm kind of stuck in some ways. How do we define the talented 10th? Sometimes people say those of us that have the skill set and the ability. My question is, everybody who's benefited, like I told you, we all are beneficiaries of the civil rights movement. That in one stroke of the pen, we see so many aspects of it that's going away. How many people in our community realize what's going on? So the talented 10th again, do you feel like you're part of the talented 10th?
By definition, yes. The only thing that made me part of it was going out to college and being able to do different things in a different way, and the responsibility also laid on my head as part of the talented 10th. So yes, in a nutshell.
Yeah, but see, that's the definition of the talented 10th, but I take it a little further. The talented 10th, you said responsibility to do what?
Come back.
See, I think that's the key. the response. We may not physically be living next door to each other anymore, but we have a responsibility as beneficiaries of our ancestors to come back and give and make others in our community better. So you said you're part of the Talented 10. Is Clarence Thomas part of the Talented 10?
Yes.
He is? Really?
By definition, yes.
So you're telling me Clarence Thomas is doing all those things to go and give back like Tony Owens to his community?
Well, it's like we spoke about earlier. We don't know what we don't know. We would want him to be. We wouldn't think about some of the actions, some of the things that we hear him say that he is. But we don't know what people are doing. I'm not letting them off the hook.
Okay, I just want to make sure you're not letting him off the hook.
No, not letting him off the hook. But I just want to make sure if we go back and do some research, he wasn't giving money or doing something behind the doors without letting everybody know, because you ain't got to always tell everybody what you're doing sometimes. So make sure we don't get caught on that.
Okay, I use him just as an example, but I want to push back, and I would say on the surface, because of some of the things, whether they're publicly, I don't know privately what he's doing, and it would be great to see and hear. And I'm not even talking about one's political party affiliation. I'm so beyond that. I'm talking about you are a Talented 10, not because you, in my mind, not because you go out and you seek and you get and you go and stand on the shoulders and you make life better for you and your immediate family. I still say you have a responsibility a little broader, because I benefited from affirmative action. I benefited from affirmative action. Clarence Thomas benefited from affirmative action. But now to vote against it and say we live in a meritocracy now, everybody should be created equal, that's fool's play. So we can go back and forth, but in my mind, on the surface, without hopefully not judging, I say he's part of the Talented 10th in terms of skill set, but in terms of what he's doing, I would say absolutely not. I say he's part of black on black crime. He's black and he's committing crime against our community. I don't mean literally shooting a gun and robbing it, but when you do things because you have the power and not use your platform for the good of all, then I think that's problematic and you're making too many assumptions. So I push back just a little on that, because I think to understand it, our young people need to understand what that really means. And there's so many young people who are making it happen, who are doing the doggone thing, but yet, as a mass, I'm concerned. Wouldn't say I'm scared, but I am concerned. And I think by being concerned, it should lead to advocacy, activism, not just speaking, but doing something around self-preservation of our community.
Well, I mean, self-preservation comes with self-knowledge. And then I'm just baffled, kind of thrown off a little bit to see so many black people walking around now scared. Because if you knew our history, you know what we came through to get to this place where we are. These times will pass too. And we don't have to worry about this, but we got to start working and orchestrating. What's our plan? What are we doing to undergird this whole problem and getting to the other side of this? Because this is going to happen, like you said earlier, whether we're not going to be able to do anything about. He's going to serve his term as the president. I don't even call his name anymore. What is our responsibility? What should we be doing when you talk about the talent intent? Are we calling them to the table? Hey, we calling it all the talent intent, all the young people that went to college, all the black people that went to these HBCUs. You should have had to sign a contract when you got your diploma. This is going to be my give back.
That's right.
Because you automatically part of the talent intent.
That's right.
All you young men that went off to these PWIs and became these big athletes, without knowing it, our community should have put our hands on them and said, you part of the talent intent. You got to do this. But you got some other people already put their hands on them, and the other contracts have been passed, and I won't even get into that. We talk about the entertainers and the rappers and the singers and all the artists that can't do stuff. And, you know, it's been said before, as much as they would like to, some of their contracts keep them from being able to.
Okay, I'm going to make an example, Tony.
$40 million slave.
There was a book written, yes, I know. He's a sports author. I forgot his name. It eludes me right now. But I'm going to make a statement here, because I think sometimes as adults, we sometimes, as the elders, for lack of a better word, those of us born in the 50s and 60s. I think sometimes we forget to look at the lens through our younger generation. And we used to have this thing, don't fall for it. You getting ready to be taken. You getting ready to be played. I want to digress just a little bit and give you an example. You mentioned about us helping, and I talked about black on black crime. You mentioned the talented 10th. There's some things in the headlines in our community. And I'm not minimizing the victims of the Sean Puffy Daddy Combs trial. I'm not minimizing it because there are victims involved. But it has overwhelmed the black media of what's going on in our community. The whole Kendrick Lamar and Drake issue. I wish I could sit down with those two brothers right now and say, man, squash that. That's foolishness. That's what one wants us to do. But how do we lift each other up, man? And just because it might sell, that doesn't mean it's right. It can still be wrong even if everybody's doing it. So for me, I'm hurt behind it because I see these two young brothers who have a platform that I consider part of the talented 10. Now, whether or not they're giving and doing, I know some of them are, and that's not for me to judge. But stop number one ought to be Drake, Kendrick Lamar, Drake, squash it. Because it is captivating what's going on in our community with things like this time next week, there's something called the Big Beautiful Bill that President 4547 is scheduled to sign when it passed the legislative body. Do we even know what that means? So I want to come back when I hear that and I see it. To me, those things in the realm of things are irrelevant. I'm not saying that I'm minimizing the impact on what happened to the folks involved, but as it relates to our entire community, that's our fight. That wasn't our fight during the civil rights movement with a couple of strokes of the pen with DEI, cancel, squash, all these other things that are impacting Black America. And now what you're doing, and I watch various news media, and now what you're doing is saying, guess what? All the fraud going on with Medicaid, SNAP, housing vouchers, Pell Grant, they made that look like that's the face of Black America. In reality, I think the Congressional Black Caucus said that, we make up 30% of something like that, or 20% of the people on Medicaid are Black. But one would make you think that Black America is committing fraud. See, those are the things we should be talking about. Those are the platforms. So how do we get that message out to our young people so we collectively realize what's really important? That's where I'm at. All that other stuff, that's foolish talk. That's crazy to me. I don't mean no harm to those young brothers because they're doing their thing, but that beefing back and forth, that's foolish talk to me.
Well, I keep it short and sweet. Hopefully, the mere fact that we're sitting here talking about drains me. What we know our power and our energy should be. See, when we shine light on that type of stuff and knowing that the industry makes them do those things, Reggie, I just can't believe that these guys fighting about stuff. They got millions and millions of dollars without that being poured on by the industry that says that we need to divert. We need to take their attention off what's really going on. It's so easy to do that with two guys at their level. Get them fighting at each other. Guess what the world do? They're going to talk about that. They're not going to talk about the bills that you just mentioned, all the things that's getting ready to happen a week from today. Why are we not talking about that stuff? Because the industry is wise enough to know if I get these guys to fight, I get these people to beef, I get everybody looking at P. Diddy trial, I get everybody looking at all the foolishness of the world. Don't forget about that shocking art that's going on over in Washington, D.C. So now I'm away from it. So we got to get to a point where we can talk to our young people. Hey, look, that's not us. That's not. Let's look at this.
So you're saying that's not our fight?
What?
The shock and awe and all those other things.
No, I'm saying that our fight is not dealing with them. Our fight is getting our young brothers in the street, not to let that be their entertainment.
Got it.
I don't let them. They got millions of dollars. I don't care if they fight for the rest of their life, Because if you're not doing the stuff that you need to be doing, I don't care about them fighting, but I do care about these young brothers letting that be their entertainment. Because now you getting pulled into that.
You're talking about the masses.
The masses. So when I'm ready to have a money conversation with you, to talk about trading stocks, when I'm ready to talk to you about trading options, when I'm ready to talk to you about this bill that's getting ready to impact you and your life, we were having a conversation with one of our friends that talked about if you keep taking all these programs away, people become criminals because you don't have talent. We already talked about the fact you can't read. Now you become a criminal, and you already know that jail systems are what? Privatized. Mm-hmm. So now you got this whole new set of slaves over here because now I'm taking care of them, but I'm not just going to let them stay in my jails and feed them and bathe them every day. I'm going to get them out there because guess what else I'm doing? I'm deporting the people that used to do this other work.
Tony,
you got to watch.
But put context. When you say you don't care, I know that's not what you said. You don't care what those brothers are doing.
You talking about Dre now?
Yeah.
I don't.
You don't care. See, I look at that different. I care because I believe they have a large platform to make a greater difference. I understand what you're saying, that's sales and that's marketing and all that. But I care. I care because they have a fiduciary responsibility, or let me change that, a responsibility because the young brothers are listening. The young brothers, you and I, they're not listening to this conversation. They're not listening to this podcast. So many are listening to it.
They listen to Charleston White.
Who?
They listen to Charleston White.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, they know who Charleston White is because I'm telling you what he used to do. Just what we do. Just what we doing, sitting here with suits and ties on. Mm-hmm. And he told everybody publicly, when I used to do that, y'all wouldn't listen to me. I had to turn into this old crazy thug cussing dude. And now I got the world listening to me because that's what sells. And I listen to him sometimes. Not so much about, I ain't gonna talk about the delivery. You know, they had a whole conversation about it on Cam Newton. And I'm not against him myself. Right. He says whatever he needs to say to get to the masses.
Tony, we can go down over the last 6 months, 8 months. I'm going to give you some headlines. And I understand what you mean you don't care. I'm going to give you some headlines. One headline was between LeBron and Stephen A. Smith. And you know how I love my sports and my news.
You asking me to care or don't care?
I'm not going to ask you care or don't care. In the realm of things, it's minuscule. I look at LeBron James and I see a great father. Now, what all the things he's doing in the community, but going back and forth as a beef and arguing amongst, to me, in the scheme of things, that's minuscule. In the scheme of what's happening to the greater community. People talking about Nick Cannon and his babies and how many, that's that man's business. If he's handling his business, it's not for me to come in and judge what he's doing.
Well, yeah, 22 now.
I don't know if it's 22, but it's in the teens, I believe. Okay. But I see a hard-working brother. Whatever he decides to do in his private life, that's their business. There's so many other things. Get out of that man's business. I mentioned about the Sean Combs trial and all those, minuscule in the scheme of the bigger picture. So I'm not minimizing what's going on, as I mentioned with the Drake and Kendrick Lamar. But what I am saying, and we want to talk a little bit about it, and when we spoke, I guess it was 2 weeks ago, when we spoke at that symposium, then before that we were training in the school district. How long ago?
June 11.
June 11, right before Father's Day. And I can tell you this, my heart is hurting because I asked myself, and I said to myself, how many people look themselves in the mirror and say to themselves, I know I'm somebody, because God didn't make no junk. When God made me, he did good. I ask myself every day, what part of our population feel that way about themselves? Because this is about self-preservation. I don't see a whole lot of other communities jumping on our bandwagon. And Judge Mathis made it very clear. He said churches are responsible. We're not shooting fingers at the churches or pointing fingers at churches. But he also said young black men voted against themselves. When they voted for, they called you-know-who, he called you-know-who a con artist. I'm not in the name calling, but I am going to challenge us because, on our last podcast, somebody mentioned something about maybe what I said and et cetera. I get it. My objective is not to hurt or harm, but my objective is to call it out. If you're harming our community, then we have a responsibility for calling it out. And it may not always feel good, but let's argue with the facts. Let's talk about the facts. So, Tony, I don't know, when I hear these things and I think about the Deion Sanders has done with his sons and people saying, well, it's not right. Yes, it is. I served in the military. My daughter retired from the military as well. I retired from the military. I want to ask, how many times that the current administration, outside the vice president, served a few years, the Secretary of Defense served a few years, but if you're not looking out and don't tell me about patriotism for your own needs, your own wants, for your own community, that's not patriotic if you're looking at the country as a whole. And so when you talk about these things and you're hating based on your behavior, and all you're looking out, when we talk about the talented 10 giving back, they're sometimes talking about the talented 10 getting richer, embellishing themselves, getting wealthier. That's not the kind of talented 10 you and I are referencing. So I say that in a way that we have a responsibility to give back and to do something and to cause an awareness. And obviously, I'm not here to say what churches are or are not doing, because I know so many of them are doing great things, and I would be remiss to try to call names out because we can see what so many of us are doing. But it has to be everybody, all of us, especially right now. When I share these statistics and this data of the impact, we have a role, even though I might not be directly impacted.
Go ahead and go to the data.
Well, let's talk about it. First of all, it's this thing called the Big Beautiful Bill. It's already done passed the House that's dominated by one party. It's now going back and forth between the Senate. And it's eventually going to pass if I was a betting man, which I'm not. But on July the 4th, what's significant about July the 4th? That 45 and 47 plans to sign the Big Beautiful Bill on July the 4th, a week from today, whether that happens or not. But when you look at the data and what's going on, the Big Beautiful Bill, if you will watch some of the news outlets, you would think that this Big Beautiful Bill that really depends on your lens you're looking at, I'm going to say in some ways is shameful. And I'm by no means believe that welfare, because I think people should get out if they have the ability, capability to get out and do for themselves, they should do it. I strongly believe that. But on the other hand, there are some people who has disabilities. Well, watch what's about to happen in the Big Beautiful Bill. Number one, Medicaid is about to be cut by so many. I think someone referenced in the Congressional Black Caucus $800 billion. I don't know the exact number, but that's not as relevant as the individual that it's going to impact. So those in poverty who depend on Medicaid, if it's going to be cut, someone has made us believe that it's only black folks that are the recipients of Medicaid. We know that's not true. I think the Congressional Black Caucus say we make up 20% of the Medicaid recipients. However, 30% of our community is on Medicaid. So who's thinking about when that's cut and you no longer can get health care, what's going to happen? That's one. Second, I think I saw something where SNAP, we're in the richest country in the world, and yet there are so many people who are still hungry. So SNAP benefits being cut by $320 million. You know what? One would believe the face of SNAP are people who look like us. First thing from the truth. And then when we think about people going off to college, getting Pell Grants, so many of those programs are going away. And not to mention housing vouchers. I'm saying people sometimes need a little help. Not to stay on it permanent if they're capable, but those things are the conversations we should be having in our churches. Those are the things we should be having. Those are the conversations we have amongst community organizations and barbershops and et cetera. But not just having a conversation, activism, doing something about it, because we can talk all day. But what are we doing to build our community up? And if we're not talking about that, and we're talking about that other foolishness that I just mentioned, those folks are going to be okay because they have millions and millions and millions of dollars, presumably. But what about the people who need our help? That's the focus of the talented 10th in my mind, not just talking, but doing something. And when you understand that the civil rights departments and so many departments in the government have been abolished, now you can't go to anyone and say you've been discriminated against. When you start having those conversations, it's not effective yet, but wait till it start happening and you get this letter and you find out you got to do a little extra. We need to empower our people, but self-preservation. You talked about money. We need to understand what money is and how it operates in a capitalist society. So that's what I'm talking about, not so much as the data, because the numbers to that one person who's about to lose their benefits, for that single mother that's working 2 jobs, catching the bus to work, coming home, trying to help her child. She needs a little help. So those are the things that I believe we should be talking about. That's why we're on this tour. That's why we're saying we need to be in the churches talking about. Because although we depend on our faith, I want a little bit of heaven, and everybody else does too, I'm assuming. Everybody wants a piece of heaven right here on earth. So why shouldn't we be talking about self-preservation, what we need to do to build ourselves and build our community?
That data is kind of startling when you look at how it's going to impact many of our loved ones that are actually using it for a hand up, not a handout, and it's a big difference. A handout, you just sitting around doing nothing, waiting on somebody to give you something. A hand up, just help me stand up a little bit longer. That's what those benefits and some of those things are for, and to think about how it's going to impact our community if we don't have a catch net in place, because hunger is going to get worse than it is now. Violence is going to go up. When people are hungry, people are violent. Things are going to change tremendously in our community. So when we don't have these conversations around the big, beautiful bill, which is not that at all, we lose time. We lose ground. We lose traction because now we're playing from a place of defense as a place to offense. If we get on the offense and we can start addressing some of the things with the churches, hey, everybody, we got to get over ourselves. We got to come together, Methodist, Baptist, Episcopal, whatever you are. We got to come together as black people up under that same struggle umbrella, because our struggle not the same. Now, I ain't pushing nobody else's struggle, but we got brought here in chains. You came over here voluntarily in the boat. You crossed the border to run over here. I hope you hear what I'm saying, but we came here a totally different way.
That's right.
And the ones that didn't make it were thrown overboard because they were dead.
Right. And then you tell me, get over it. I mean, get over what? How you expect me to get over it?
Well, I'm gonna tell you what happens when you say get over it. Guilty.
That's what you think is going on.
When you look at our history, what we went through, some of the things that happened, when you think about the real definition of a picnic, and you think about I don't want to go that far, and when you think about what lynchings were for, to actually scare other people from being fearful of running. If you run, this is what's going to happen to you. So, but I'm going to go back. When you think about where we are and what we've been through and our strength and why DEI, critical race theory, affirmative action, all those things were put in place because I need to feel good about what I did to these people. I did this to them. I got to admit to it. So now critical race theory says, don't talk about that no more. We don't want to talk about the worst part of American history. We want to act like it never happened and tell people if you teach it, if you talk about it in public schools, that's a crime. How you going to deny what made this country what it is? If it had not been for the backs of former slaves, this country wouldn't be what it is today. And you can say that, and with no hesitation, no, that's the only way this country got to where it is. So when you talk about those things and you're looking at what they're trying to take away, you asked earlier whose responsibility is to tell our young people about the talent of the 10th. It's our responsibility.
I agree.
We can't wait for the public system to tell them. I mean, we've been hearing this from other leaders for a long time. Marcus Garvey told us that years ago. They said, it's very important, y'all. Don't depend on DEI. Don't depend. You're not diversity, you're not equity, you're not inclusion. What you want to be included in? Why you don't have your own? Why you going to be used as a pawn to make somebody else feel like they got diversity in their company? See, that's what diversity is. So when you talk about the real issues, why are we not focusing on the fact that we deserve those things because you owe it to us? I truly believe affirmative action, yeah, you got to give me a chance. We gave you 400 years of free labor. You gave us 50 years of decent freedom. I'm talking about since I've been here that I can recognize.
So you're talking about the civil rights movement.
I'm talking about
all the civil rights legislation is what you're referencing.
I'm talking about all that stuff was owed to us, plus some, and that don't even come close to getting us to the end zone. Because you already at the other end zone. You done ran your touchdown. Y'all just kicked off to us when we caught the ball, and you said, we're going to let you get to the end zone, but now we're going to take all those things out. We still got 100 yards in front of us to go.
Yeah, but you just took us back. Based on all these things, you just took us back to the goal line.
That's exactly what you did.
You over the course of the last 6 months. And when you say things like, on the surface, when you say things like the country is a meritocracy, which means that everybody is created equal and we're going to award people things based on merit. That's foolishness. And we have fallen again and we can't afford to listen to that foolishness. But on the other hand, I'm going to say this again. DJT is the president of the United States for as a minimum for the next 3.5 years. Now that we know that, I can stay in that space. But my discernment say, Reggie, okay, you are aware, you know what's going on, but okay, now what are we going to do? You see, that's where I'm at, Tony. I'm at the self-preservation. I'm at what are we going to do for ourselves to help ourselves to create? We can protest. We can do all those things. Look how all these folks are falling in line. You know why they're falling in line? If I'm a multi and I'm worth hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars like some of them are, you have a platform, but why are you caving in? Why are you ridding yourself of all your DEI initiatives? Why are these law firms? Why are these colleges and universities courtailing? Because so much of it has to do with money, and we're not just having a conversation about right and wrong. We're having a conversation around capitalism. Because in the United States, the country is built on money and power. Those with the money, those with power are making these decisions. And there's something happened earlier this week, and I want to say this, and I wonder how many more people, but I think we have to ask this question, and this is all we need to know. I didn't say it. He said it out of his own mouth. Mitch McConnell, who at once was the most powerful or one of the most powerful men in the country, may still be to some degree, but he is not the leader of the Senate. He said these words, guys, go ahead and basically get behind the big, beautiful bill. Because in the next 18 months, they'll be unforgot about it. That tells me that's like saying write it in a book. If you put it in a book, black folks are not going to get it because they're not going to read the book. To me, that's foolishness. And if we don't make people pay for it, we can't make them pay for it for 18 months because that's when the whole legislative cycle starts back over, and then 3.5 years. And I'm not talking about who you're voting for or who you don't, because that's your individual choice. But when people are able to say that means that they don't really care what you think in a capitalist society. And you know I'm a capitalist at heart, but I also believe in helping those who need help. I give. I want to keep giving. But you can't give to nobody if you don't have. So that's the conversation that I hope, and hope is not a method. Because without opportunity, there is no hope. And that's what we're talking about. Our people must have opportunities. And this big, beautiful bill and all of the executive orders that impact Black America has eliminated or discarded so many opportunities that the civil rights movement afforded us in our community. And I wonder again, rhetorically, maybe not, how many people in our community are aware of what's about to happen and what's already happening in our community.
Scary.
Say that word again.
Scary. Really scary, because nobody actually.
It's also shameful. I think there's two ways of looking at it. You either help yourself or you get overcome by the events that are happening and about to happen. Why else would the front row seat be a bunch of billionaires and billionaires? And granted, I'm pro-business, but we have a responsibility. Why should tax cuts not be in place if I'm worth hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars? Warren Buffett said it, that we should be paying more. How many more billions do you need? When I mention about, and then not even mention the veterans and other people that are going to be impacted. So if you haven't walked that walk and you don't know and you're not paying attention, you've been discarded. And that's unfortunate. And so I ask you again, and I know we can't quantify it, but is our community as a whole aware? And if not, we got to stay what we're doing. We got to continue going to churches. We have to continue going, not just us, but all of us. We must continue to go inside churches and talk about this, have this conversation so our people are aware. We must get the invitations. It doesn't mean we lose our faith, but based on my understanding, the church has been the foundation of the civil rights movement. The church leaders, those talented 10 that were giving back to the movement. I just believe that it's going to take an effort on all of us. And I'm going to say this, and I don't know if you agree or the audience agree. This is the first time, I believe, since the civil rights movement in the 60s, that we've had one single, not issue, but circumstance of what's happening to us. This is the first time in 60 plus years, I would say, maybe 50-something, 60-something years, since the mid-60s, that we've had something that's impacted our community as a whole. I understand about Black Lives Matter. I get it. I understand about, police killing black folks, black men, black folks. But tell me one issue we've had over the last 60 years that will have a greater negative impact on Black America than what's about to happen to us, that's already happening to us. When you eliminate DEI, when you eliminate, and they're calling it welfare. Come on, you just mentioned welfare. Was it welfare when we were building this country, helping build this country, and now you want to discard our history? So I get it, but I'm also in the action mood right now. Because my discernment says, I can't worry about that. And serenity says, accept the things I can't do anything about. I've been voting ever since I've been of voting age. But I can't vote again for another 18 months or 3.5 years. And I need to ask the question. Tell me, Republicans, Democrats, Independent, what are you going to do to help support and promote my community? So don't come back to me every 3.5 years or every 2 years and say, hey, and pull up the challenges without telling me, what are you going to do in an intentional way? What are you going to do? If you tell me you're my elected official, what are you doing because of my interest? Not the 1%. I'm not there. What are you going to do? That's where I'm at, Tony, and I just think that we are not there as a community. As long as we keep focusing on, I don't want to minimize all that other stuff, but I know it sells. But at the end of the day, it's minuscule compared to what's really important in our world.
Well, when I think about my man Charleston White, I'm going to liken him to trading stocks. And we trade stocks in the morning. So, you got a green day and you got a red day. Green day means you made a lot of money or you did good. And you did a red day where you walked away losing money or a green day is still breaking even. So I'm gonna take Charleston White's. He had more green days than red days with me, based on the fact that he says stuff, he says it differently. He makes very valid points when he says it. Everybody don't like the way he says it. And he said once upon a time he used to walk around looking like me. Nobody listened to him. And he said he was on Capitol Hill changing bills, putting other stuff in place that nobody never knew about. But when he really needed to get an audience, he needed to act like a thug and start dressing and talking the way that he talks. Now, do I agree with everything he says? Lots. Not everything, but lots. And it makes a lot of sense, when you talk about unity and how a race of people can come together and conquer, and they call this race of people patriots. And they call them that because they came together, they saw an issue, they said we're gonna come together, we're gonna pool our resources, and this is what we're gonna do as a community. What are we talking about doing? We're asking our community to do the same thing. That we're gonna pool our money, we're gonna come together, we're gonna take that talent in 10th, y'all gonna go get that money, y'all gonna bring it back to us, talent in 10th, y'all gonna go get that education, you're gonna bring it back to us, talent in 10th, you're gonna go and get that doctorate degree and come back and help us heal our community. So when you talk about what Charleston is saying, he's saying if they can do it, why won't we do it? Why won't we do it? That's easy to me. If everybody else, every other race of people, Asian, Mexican, white, Indian, everybody else, they walk together, they talk together, they spend their money together, they eat together, but we hadn't done it yet. And I think some of it's partially what happened to us too now. We got to keep in mind, we were robbed of our names, we were robbed of our religion, we were robbed of our creed, and we had to come over here and learn how to live as a whole nother people. We don't even know what our really lifestyle should be like.
So let me just add one point to that. I think it's worth, when we go in our communities and we see the Dairy Queens of the world, we see the other small restaurants, we see the gas stations, we see the unhealthy food that others are bringing to our community, and they have ownership of these various businesses. Food deserts, making our people even more unhealthy. I always ask the question, how is it that people who are not even citizens, people who haven't come over to this country and helped build it, can get a hand up so easily, but yet so many people are hating on us? For what reason? I mean, we're the most loving and caring people in the world, because if we were not, then we would probably retaliate for some of the things that have happened to us and blaming us and all those other things. So my thing is, I think you're so point on.
Our struggles are not the same.
Our struggles are not the same.
And I'm going to tell you why. What happened when you said, how come they can come do this and do that? They put this pot out there and said, anybody that wants to get this money, come get it. If you're of this, you're a part of this pot. If you're a minority, you go into this pot. Not black folk. This y'all line over here, because we still owe y'all from them last 400 years. So they put everybody in this same line, and when they got in that line, they got moved to the front because of the way they look. They got moved to the front because they didn't look like me and Reggie. And you might say that's a minuscule way to look at it, but those people didn't look, walk, talk, and act like what they've been keeping back for the last 400 years. So I'm okay with you getting up to the front. I saw Reggie and Tony standing back there, but they got the money first. They had the idea. Give them the money, let them open up the Dairy Queen, let them open up the gas station, let them open up whatever it is that they open up, and there goes the community.
So I'm going to say two things, and I hope people understand the context that I said, and it's piggyback on what you just said. I think we know the United States have what we call a SEC system, S-E-C-T, or more importantly, a value system about how the United States has shown how it values people. Now, I'm not saying how I value myself. I'm saying based on how we're being treated. Number one, the United States look at it, this whole hierarchy. They look at white men and then white women. Then after that, they look at Asians, Indians, white men, Asian, Indians, and others, they're white women. And then they look at Hispanic to a degree. I'm not talking about what's going on with immigration. I'm talking about if I can pay you pennies to do certain work, then I value what you're doing. If I'm paying you 10 cents and you making me 90 cents, and I'm not having to pay taxes on that, then I value Hispanic men, Latino men, and then Latino women. And then I value black women and then black men. Do you notice what I just did? And then up under that, the Native Americans. Do you see what I just did? In this country, the United States value all these other races, men then women, except in the United States, based on the way they treat us, they value our black women, then our black men. And I'm not saying I'm not saying that because our sisters have held it down. I'm saying that based on what is happening to us. It's almost like they could care less and they have zero use for black men now. And that may be a bit controversial, but I'm not talking about how you feel. I'm talking about what you're doing. And to me, that's the same when you start talking about that pot of money and opportunities. Can't be in the hope without opportunities. We help build it. You mentioned about, we're old. Well, we've been saying that a long time and nobody's listening. In other words, nobody's taking any action. It's one thing to hear and listen. It's another thing to take some action and do something about it. And so that's subjective, but I'm also going by how I feel and what we're seeing in the conversation we're having around this value system. And why I would say, who else jumps on our issues? When the last time a whole bunch of different audiences, some people, those moral compass angels, a few of them from other races, have jumped on black issues. But when do people jump on our issues? I'm not minimizing immigration. I understand, I get it. But when the last time people have jumped on causes that impact black America? Some are doing it, and I'm not saying all, so please all, I'm not saying everybody because you have pockets. But as a collective group, who is jumping on our bandwagon? Just saying. Who's jumping on our bandwagon? Supporting black causes when it's not right. I'm not talking about coming out with a soundbite. I'm talking about going deep and supporting our causes. And we are dealing with a capitalist world. And once you understand money and power, you're going to be better served. Once you understand self-preservation, you're going to be better served. Once you understand how money works, once you understand your role, your responsibility in this country that I'm a citizen of, served 20 plus years in the military. However, being woke, somebody done stole the narrative from us again. Man, it used to be a good thing to be awake. Now they said they mad at something bad because we've allowed somebody to steal the narrative around being woke. It shouldn't be a negative connotation. I'm glad I'm awake because I want to pay attention to what you're doing to me. And those of us who allowed it, we don't need to repeat it again. And those of us in that talented 10th, we have a responsibility. I keep going back to that. And now we got to put the challenge out there. We have to put the challenge out there to all of us, to include us, because we're not pointing the finger without three coming back at us.
I just think that we need to get those who think they are, by definition, to spend some time studying up what W.E.B, the Bois expected of the talented 10. And it wasn't so much that you were talented beyond compare or measure. It was just your talent was.
You're not better than the other people in your community.
No.
Okay.
You just had the opportunity.
That's right.
To go and do and get and bring back. That's all that meant. It didn't mean you were going to be bouncing the basketball, catching the football, hitting the baseball, singing a rap song, starring in a movie, or hitting the golf ball. It didn't mean none of that. But if you just so happen to be in that and you're part of that talented 10th, you had a responsibility to come back and do some of the things that they probably already told you can't do in your contract. And that's a whole nother conversation.
But okay. You and I, we're although I hear you, you can't do that because that's part of your contract. So because you are worth $5 billion, we're going to pull this from you and you are not going to make another billion if you go and do the things that you're talking about.
Yes.
Well, you know, you're just a little bit conspiracy anyway, and there's probably some truth to it. And you know me, I know those things exist, but I have to have enough faith and belief that the glass is half full and that people will see. And they don't owe it to us to come and show, but they have a responsibility. I had an opportunity to do something different with my life as well, and I made a choice. And I believe that you have a choice. The only thing that's guaranteed, eventually you're going to die. Time you can't get back. You can't take it all with us. I think Denzel said, when the last time you seen somebody have behind that hearse a U-Haul truck full of all of your belongings and everything else? At a certain point, when do you stand up and help your fellow man? So it sounds to me like, I'm not saying you're giving them an excuse, but I need you to clarify for me what you mean by when you say, well, maybe that, I mean, we don't have to go deep. We're not calling names, but you say maybe in their contract they can't do what? See, to me, that's no different than being a $40 million slave.
I agree.
So you can't help your community because your contract and your ability to make zillions and zillions of dollars, if you do these things, it could get in the way of your ability.
Why do you think some people's careers go up and some people go down, some people go up and some go down, and they just as talented?
Go ahead. I know where you're going.
I leave it right there. I mean, it's just, there are some things that happen in this society that people don't want to mention, and some people can't mention it, and they won't mention it because it's going to jeopardize their career. And it's real. It's very real. And young people know about it. We're older people, people our age, we're just figuring it out because we've been so systematic. We believed in the system. We believe everything was just, this is America. They would never do that.
You mean our generation?
Yes. America.
Not our ancestors, our parents. You're saying our generation.
Our parents didn't believe in it.
So you're saying the baby boomer generation, we got hoodwinked, bamboozled.
Ask your question again. Who got bamboozled?
Our generation. Our generation got bamboozled?
Yeah, we were weak.
We were weak.
We believed we thought we had overcame. Our parents talked about overcoming. We thought we were the overcamers. And after we overcame, we started mixing in. We wanted to be a part of everything else. We didn't want our own identity. We wanted to move out to Buckhead, want to move out to Roswell, move out to Sandy Springs. And you said we still had that community, but I still remember, I always want to go back to the community that I know. And when I can go up and down to Clover Street and tell you everybody that lived on that street and everybody in that neighborhood had a man in the house. And everybody in that neighborhood had a car.
How many houses would you say on Clover Street?
18.
And I grew up in a community just the opposite, where there were 600, 700, 800 apartments. No men in the house, because everybody depended on Uncle Sam, for lack of a better word, in the welfare system in the 60s, early 70s. No men in the house, and nobody had a car. And now you're raising a whole community of traumatized people. And so that's why I just believe, and based on the story I just told, I just believe that it is time, and I think it's a good place to be in. And I'm going to say that, and people are like, you're off your rockers. I think it's a good place because it gives us a chance to reimagine, reactivate what you're talking about, what we had in the 60s and the early 70s, the civil rights movement. I think it's an opportunity. We must not squander it. We must get to this new generation, the Zers and the X generation, millennials, and et cetera. We must come together and realize, guess what? We must create that village again, and it doesn't have to be that physical location anymore. But we must. And you and I talk about it all the time. I think we failed. We failed the next generations because I'm taking myself as a father. All I want to do is go out, get that job, get the things I never had before, the material things, get them, make my daughter's life better than it ever has been, help my mother, my siblings. But I don't know if I passed it down because they're doing successful to a degree. But it wasn't until 20 years ago that I thought, man, I need to do more. I need to do more. I need to give back to my community because if I'm really part of the talented 10, I can't keep this gift, this blessing just for myself. I must spread it, share it. I must in this capitalist society that we live in, that 45, 47 is calling a meritocracy. First thing from the truth.
I think it's a horrible time for us to be in right now. And the only reason I'm going to say that because we've come up out of worse situations. And once it gets this bad, that's usually what galvanizes us. And if we didn't know it, we might have needed this kick in the butt. It's a horrible way to get there.
That's right.
But we rise. We always rise. And when it gets bad, we get better. And we know how to figure it out. We know how to, that's why we didn't jump off no buildings when the stock market crashed.
That's right.
Because we still had money up in the mattress. We didn't put all our money in the stock. We were smart enough to know that. So when you think about the fact, when we get pushed together, it's going to happen. Preachers, NAACP, SCLC, all these HBCUs, it's going to happen.
It's coming.
We have nowhere else to go now.
A tsunami is coming.
We have nowhere else to go other than home.
So let me say, but you just said one thing though. We didn't jump out the building when the stock market. We dealt with stress. Just because we dealt with stress and we dealt with so much trauma doesn't mean we should have to deal with trauma and stress. And the only pushback I would say, because the way you said it, I want to make sure the audience know, Tony and I are very much believers in the market. But we're believers in the market because we understand the market now. Whereas before, education or experience, or the stock market. The stock market. We're investors in the market. But we're invested because knowledge is powerful. We understand it. We've taken 6 months to understand and learn about it. Whereas most of the people in our community who I talk to, they're not believers in the stock market. They think it's gambling. Not understanding that most millionaires come out of the financial services industry. And when we know that and we go and not allow others, just a simple analogy. You put your money in the bank, you get 1% interest on your money, 2% interest on your money. The banks use your money to make loans for houses, for car loans, for all these other credit cards and et cetera. They're taking your money, using your money, getting somebody else to pay them 18, 20, 25% interest on the money they're using, and paying you 2% or 1% to let it stay in there. Make it make sense to me. That's a simple. Another simple. Why would you go out and live beyond your means knowing you can't afford it and you living paycheck to paycheck? I understand why, because we all have done it. Because we wanted to buy some stuff when you never had nothing. You want to go get some stuff, but now it's time for us to be aware and alert how to create a business, how to be a businessman, how to be a businesswoman, how to be an entrepreneur, why you need to go to college, why you need to go get some skills, why you need to create business, why you need to invest your dollar back into our own community. You and I were in Detroit. We deliberately intentional, wanted to find 2 days. We did it in D.C., we did it in D.C., we did it in Detroit. We wanted to deliberately be intentional of finding black businesses. I'm just saying, why? There's nothing wrong with it. Because you're telling me it's a meritocracy, but when you ever see a bunch of businesses calling these black businesses to say, hey, I want to do business with you first? There's some, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying everybody, but when? It just doesn't happen. We're being hoodwinked. And please don't get it twisted. My only point, and we're going to keep going. A friend of mine's mentioned, and I 100% agree. Let's take, and it's controversial to a degree. Do we once believe that, and I'm not talking one way or the other, that abortion is a moral issue, a health issue? Do we once believe those who are making these decisions believe that that's morally wrong? Or do we believe that we need to stop so many abortions from one part of the generation called white America because their numbers are decreasing? I'm not saying everybody. And oh, by the way, we really don't care what they do over there in their communities. They're going to kill each other and hurt each other. These crime infested, and they call those communities whatever they want. Did we once believe that Vice President Kamala Harris was going to get elected by people, where in some states the abortion rights passed, but yet she didn't win those states. So and again, everybody, this is just one person's opinion that was said to me, that one, you got to increase your population. You need to increase your people, and because the numbers are dwindling. And I forgot the number that the census said, if it keeps going like this, then the white majority is not going to be the majority by a certain date. Those things are intentional. Call it conspiracy or what have you. But I just think that, and I'm not by any means preaching, I'm not a preacher, but saying anything about hate. Because if you love us, I love you. I don't hate anybody. But don't try to play me stupid. And as the young people would say, I think the word is finesse. Don't be finessing me. I think it's the way it's said. Don't be trying to finesse me. Grown folks, I need you all to go and find out what that means. Elders, I need you to go find out what that means. Because finesse used to be a positive thing in my mind. Oh, that boy has so much finesse. Young people say finesse means you're trying to take advantage of me and use me. So I don't want us to get played and being finessed, as the young people would say, to understand why it's happening. To me, that's where we are, and what are the next steps for us to help fix, challenge, not just advocate, but take action. And I know you said something about a movement is not a movement. You can strike and protest all day. And I forgot how you said it, Tony, but you said something about a protest is not any good without.
Oh,
Can you finish that?
Carter G. Woodson said it. So the protest without a plan is useless.
A protest without a plan is useless.
You protest to bring attention to and shine light on the issue.
Right.
But what's your ask?
Right.
You don't have an ask when you got to protest. Why you protest? If you're not asking for anything, hey, look, this is happening, they just want to shine a light on it. Say, okay, what you want us to do about it? I ain't sure. We just wanted y'all to see it. Waste of time.
So a protest without a plan.
And that's probably not exactly the way Carter G. Woodson said.
But you and I talk about it all the time, right. And I know it wasn't rhetorical. I wanted our audience to hear you say it. But you're exactly right. We can go put picket signs up. We can talk about all the terrible things that's going on right now. We can talk about there are no kings in the U.S. and all of that. We can talk about all those things. But when those signs go down that night, what's the action plan? And, you know, we train, we teach this. We talk about actionable plan. We go and we go inside institutions and we talk about what's your actionable plan. And we support and we help them see you have to be intentional. So don't just show up and let's protest and say it's not right. Let's take some actions on what you're going to do to make it better. And I think that's what you're saying. And again, you said it was the Carter G. Woodson that said it? Young people, old people, go find out who Carter G. Woodson is. That smartphone you have is not there just to the
miseducation of the Negro.
Yeah. Some people say he's the father of the Black History Month and et cetera. Yeah, but find out, because this is our history. We must read, we must sit down and tell our stories. We must challenge as part of what we're talking about when we go in churches and we go in other institutions. We talk about actionable plans beyond the protest. And that's what I like to call it, beyond the protest. Glasses half full. A protest by itself is just the glass is half empty. Let's see what we need to do to fill up the other half of that glass to make it full by taking action to do something. Self-preservation, reimagining. You say it's an opportunity. I think so too. And the other thing I would say for all of us, go listen to the speech, and I think you told me about it, and we've heard it a myriad of times, the speech by Dr. King, The Other America. That's the name of it, right? Young people, old people, go look at this. He got beyond, because you know, I can't get to economic issues until I deal with the brutal killing, hanging of my people, services first, the opportunity to vote. I have to deal with those things. But then that was a paradigm shift to The Other America, which was, and if you would give a little snippet, and then we want people to look at it themselves.
You start talking about money. I mean, it's simple as that. Dr. King shifted and said, we don't have money, we don't have resources, we can't do anything as a people. So it changed the whole trajectory of what he was talking about. It's simply about money.
About money. Go listen. You need both. And I think that's the message that we want people to hear is we must do both. And our job, our role is not to be controversial, but it is to call things out. And anyone who believes, and I just want to put a plug in when we were having the conversation with Judge Mathis, or when we were listening to Judge Mathis, and he was calling people out, but he wasn't calling people out to hurt and harm. He was calling people out because he believed that our generation failed the next generations because we were that talented 10th and we didn't do our part. And that's why he was calling out, for lack of a better, and calling out doesn't mean, I need to be called out sometimes. I get called out sometimes, and that's healthy for people you respect who know that it's coming from a place of love. And everything that Tony and I are saying is coming from a place of love, even when it doesn't feel that way. When I say everything we're saying is right, but we are saying our hearts are in the right place, and we have a responsibility when it's not right to call it out.
I guess on a note of small businesses, I saw something with something going viral with Pinky Cole, the owner of Slutty Vegan. Basically, she lost her business, and she recently bought it back. Instead of I guess a lot of her supporters being happy for her and congratulations, you got the business back, you're making this move or whatever. A lot of people were kind of bashing her about not giving the details of how she failed and things like that. So I guess if you could, can we kind of speak to, I guess, why it's hard for us to support black businesses, or why people act like it's hard for us to support black businesses or be happy for one another?
You want to start, Tony?
No, I got to think about that because I've got some stuff going.
Yeah, Tony got a lot of things going through his mind. We've had these conversations, but I use that as an example. And Hayes, our producer, wanted us to talk about it. And I would say anyone that relishes in Sister Cole losing her business, that's black on black crime to me. That's awful. If you have that same mindset, that's that crowd mentality. Now, I also believe there's so many lessons that she can teach on what happened to her. I'm reminded when I went to the Harvard Business School for senior strategic management for nonprofits, one of the toughest courses I've ever attended. I'm reminded that they did a case study on you know who, Famous Amos, our good friend who has passed on, who owned, anybody that's had the Famous Amos cookies, some of the best cookies in the world. But guess what? He didn't own it. Most people don't know that. It's a case study on what not to do. He lost his business. You know how many billions of dollars have been made, and he didn't own the rights to his own name, his own picture, his own name, image, and likeness. All I'm saying is those are the kinds of things that we have had experiences of that we should be back teaching. And in her case, it's not for me to judge. I will hope that I get a chance to sit down with her and see how you can turn a negative in terms of a positive and how she can teach other black businesses. I wish we can, I'm going to ask our people to look at how we can meet with her and set up a platform to talk about these things, because that's important. She's going through a gate, and now that she has her business back, she can prevent people from going through that pitfall with some of her lessons learned and some of the things that we are so well aware of. To me, that I again, you know me, I'm always looking for the glass being half full. I can't focus on the black on black crime, people who are hating on her, as opposed to saying, hey, sister, I think you ought to set up a forum and talk about what happened, how it happened, and this is what you need to do to prevent yourself. Similar to what the lesson I got from Famous Amos, losing billions and billions. And you know, he was one of our friends. We met him. He was on the board of an organization that we both served in, Communities in Schools. And so I think that's the angle I want to take, that I hope we take, that you can see the good in it, as opposed to the bad, because sometimes those experiences are the best teaching in the world.
I'm pretty sure she got all these comments from social media. And I'll go ahead and say this. Social media is out of control. We can't control it. We can't control the algorithm that's being ran in our minds to make us pick up that phone more times than we don't. We sit amongst friends with our phone, texting somebody else on the other side of town, looking at videos in a room full of family members. So if it happened on social media, sister, don't worry about it. But I will say the same thing that Reggie said. We got to stop it. If you want some help from the young lady, hey, tell me what happened. I just want to know, because I want to make sure that I don't have that same pitfall. That's the only thing she's responsible for. All that hate. If it weren't for social media, she wouldn't hear half of it. So we got to be sure, y'all. We got to get a hold on this thing called social media, because I'm working on it personally, not picking up my phone, because it's entertaining, man. You look at a 30-second meme or 30, and I know we asked them for it, but I see our babies, and I also see our adults. And that scares me when people can't put that phone down and you're sitting right across from somebody. So that social media probably blew that whole thing up. If no social media, you probably wouldn't have heard not one of those comments.
Access.
Tough one today. We're not through with it. Just touching the tip of the iceberg when you think about what next. What next? We got all these issues coming up. And what we're saying is we got to do this thing that we call visioneering. We see what's going on, but we got to have a vision to get past it. And once we get that vision, we got to say, let's build a plan. That's the engineering part. And that's one of the words, one of the training Reggie and I use. We call it visioneering. Now we understand the problems. We know what needs to happen. Now let's engineer what needs to happen after this. But it's not going to happen until we come together. Our struggles are not the same, y'all. Don't keep putting yourself in the same pot with everybody else. We're the only race of people that got to this country the way that we did.
I want to be a little bit more intentional. Tony's exactly right around the work that we do. But I want to extend ourselves a little more because we're hungry. We're hungry in a way that we want to keep making a difference. We're mad. We want to make a difference, not mad, angry. We want to make a difference. And so I want to extend this olive branch, for lack of a better word. I want to extend this handshake. I want to extend it to others in the community. To, first of all, those of us who have subscribed to our podcasts that are on social media, we're going to ask you to subscribe. Don't just look at it, subscribe to it. We can only stay doing what we do when you subscribe to it, number one. And number two, you tell somebody about it if you like it. We hope you do. And then finally, we're going to ask the other folks who may or may not to give us an invitation, pastors. Hear what we're talking about. Hear what others like us are talking about. So you have a vision, and we want to talk to you about how do we engineer this, so this whole self-preservation. So invite us. We're open. I normally don't talk like this, because like, well, if people want us, they'll contact us. But one of our producers asked me to say intentionally, subscribe, tell somebody, but also other entities, whether you're a business, whether you're a nonprofit, whether you're a church.
Like to.
So you're a school, like it, but also help us, let us show you this work in an intentional way, similar to the work we've been doing the last couple of weeks. We've been doing it 20 plus years now, and we think we have a lot to give, and we want to be part of the solution. And so, as I always say, on behalf of two men on the stool, Reggie and Tony, two bald-head brothers by way of Atlanta, Georgia, just trying to do good work, we know that our legacy is dependent on the work that we do, and now we want to reclaim, reimagine what we're doing. So again, subscribe to our channel, support the work, and let us know what your thoughts are, because without you, we can't continue to do this work. We thank you. Our job and our intent is not to offend anybody. We love you, and a doggone thing you can do about it. Love you.